I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, episode number 142. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. Hey everyone, welcome. How are you? I think about you guys so much and genuinely curious. I wish I could sit down and have coffee with each and every one of you and just hear about what's up, what's going on with your firm. I think about it a lot, like the things that you guys deal with and are up against, and I get good ideas from conversations with clients that I get to have around certain topics that I know all of you are dealing with. So I try to extract from those conversations and bring them to light here on the podcast. And it's just that kind of stuff. It is kind of like I get to sit down and have coffee with my clients when I'm talking to them about what's going on. That's great. I love that so much. And it allows me to be a tool for them, an instrument for them to get on track and start creating the things that they want to create. And me being as useful as possible is where my head needs to be in this game. And so I get to do that with them. And I'm hoping that bringing some of that to you is going to be really useful for you. If I could only have coffee with each and every one of you, how amazing would that be? But you know what? We'll settle for this, and I'll share what I would probably share with you if we were able to have coffee. And if you are bringing up some of the things that my clients are bringing up, so it can't be that far off from you. So let's do that. Let's have coffee. What I'm going to be talking about on the podcast today is something that's been a trend in private client phone calls, and then also inside of Master Group, our coaching calls there. And it's so fascinating. I can't figure out what is happening. It feels like everyone presented with different issues, but it was the same root cause. And that's what I'm going to address here today. And I don't know what the heck I was sharing with all of them. I don't know if the moon is in the right place in the sky, but everybody had these pretty deep things that they were bringing. They all presented a bit differently, but it was all for the same reasons that they were experiencing what they were experiencing in terms of the discomfort that they were experiencing, the pain that goes along with that. Parts of this journey are not pleasant, right? That's the truth of it. And it doesn't matter what you're doing in life. I have a good friend who always says life is 50-50, and she's extremely successful. And I think about that a lot. Like, no matter how successful you are, there's always going to be 50% that's amazing and 50% that you're like, ugh. And so that's what these people are bringing. So as they're thriving in success in so many respects, there's also this other side that's extremely difficult to navigate and is extremely uncomfortable. And that's part of the game, right? Like, you don't get to escape that. So let's get to it. Even though it presented differently, I'm just going to get to the point and tell you what the actual problem is in the cases that were brought to me this specific week with coaching calls. And also important to note, what I'm going to be sharing today is applicable across anything, any area of life that you were actually striving to get a certain result. So this could be health goals. This could be relationship goals. This could be going after something external that feels really good and fun. But I'm going to be talking about it with you and growing your law firm, just to keep it simplified. But this applies no matter what area you are creating new results in on purpose. When you do the work that's required in order to grow your firm will get to a place that it's almost like you realize, like, you hit your goal, let's say at the end of the year, and you're like, whoa, like Jake and Chris just talked about this on their podcast episode. It was like, holy hell, we did it. Wow. Blow your own mind kind of stuff. And what can happen is that the way that you see yourself, your self-image as an owner, hasn't quite caught up to the success that your business has had. And that can become a problem because as the business is operating at this level, this new level, but you and your self-image haven't really caught up, then there's a lot of cognitive dissonance that can happen. And it creates a lot of discomfort and pain because it's almost like you aren't a match for the new business, for the new level of the firm. And that is very important work to do. When I say self-image, what I mean is the beliefs that you have about you, the beliefs that you have about yourself and what you're capable of and what's possible and how good of a job you're doing and et cetera, et cetera. And it's not about pumping yourself up. It's about being extremely honest. How do you see yourself really? Not how do you want to see yourself, although that's very important to tune into. We'll talk about that in a minute. But how do you currently see yourself? Get really honest about that, because the more honest you can be, then you have something to work from instead of just trying to paste on these positive beliefs that you actually don't really believe. So you have to be really honest about what is your current beliefs about yourself as the owner. And there's different respects we can look at within that. How do you see yourself as the owner of this firm? Now, when we're talking about incongruency between the way that you see yourself, your self-image, and having of something, the easiest way to showcase this is when people don't manage money well, don't have a great relationship with money, and they win the lottery. You can read all kinds of stories out there about how people will lose that money, or they'll spend it, or they'll blow it, and they'll be broke again. They will end up broke again. And that is because the way that they see themselves and their beliefs that they have about themselves is not congruent with the having of millions of dollars. You will always behave in accordance with how you see yourself, what you believe about yourself. You will always live in a way to prove true what you think about yourself. It will always be that way. Okay, so I started with the lottery example just to get your brains clicked into what I'm saying. But now I want you to think about you and what you are creating with the growth of your firm. As your firm grows, if you don't actively, consciously develop your self-image along the way that you think about yourself and the way that you see yourself as an owner along the way, then the more dissonance there will be when you actually reach the result. So when you hit a goal, but you haven't been actively cultivating, sort of up-leveling how you see yourself and confirming new beliefs about yourself as the owner, the dissonance is that much greater when you actually reach the goal, and there's a bigger gap to close there. So there'll always be a gap to close. I think that's part of life. But when people aren't awake to this and they're just going after their dreams and they get their dreams, but they've never shifted their beliefs about them and what they're capable of and how they see themselves as an owner, it's just a much greater discomfort, much more cognitive dissonance when you get the result. I feel like I'm kind of repeating myself, but this is a hard podcast to do because when I'm one-on-one in conversation with someone, I could just go deep on their thing and it's so clear to see. They see it. The second that I say it, it's like, oh my God, right? But it's difficult to speak in generalities about this if I can't tailor it to you and your specific situation. But I do want you to think about, if you would ask yourself, how do you see yourself as an owner, generally speaking? And not just an adjective that describes you in the moment. Like sometimes I'll ask people that and they'll say things like on fire, motivated, determined. That's not what I mean. I'm talking like character trait. You as an owner, what would you say? So to give you an example, I have a really good friend who is extremely successful and has certain arrangements with people that work with her and for her. And that's carried her beautifully up till maybe a year ago. And now the level of revenue that she is making, that business arrangement doesn't make sense anymore. But she's just kept running with it. And now she's waking up to see that this is not the smartest arrangement and she needs to make changes. And there's a lot of fear that comes with that. A lot of maybe doesn't want to hurt people's feelings, she has to make calls that like some people are definitely not going to be happy with. Doesn't matter. She needs to make the calls. But when we were talking about this, what is her self-image as an owner? She said passive. That's a very honest answer. Now, she's clearly a pretty good businesswoman because of the company she's built. So it would be very easy for someone in her shoes who's making millions of dollars in her business to say, I'm a strong businesswoman. And instead, she's choosing to use this space as an opportunity to really get honest with the way that she thinks about herself and the thing that's like sticking out to her more than anything else. And it doesn't mean she doesn't think she's a good businesswoman. She does. But her self-image around her as an owner, she's very honest in saying, I've been passive and it's time to put my big girl pants on, basically. And that's super honest. And I think so many people, when I ask you, how do you see yourself as an owner, you may go to the positive poly end of it to sort of cheer yourself on. And there's a time and a place for that. But really, when it's just you and you're looking in the mirror, is there a word that sort of rises to the surface that feels honest about how you see yourself? Because in those moments, whatever the words come that describe you at its root, at its nut, at its core, how you see yourself, your self-image currently around something, the more honest you can get, it just points you in the direction of where you need to elevate the way that you see yourself. And when you decide to elevate how you see yourself, then you decide to start acting differently. And that's her first really step, is her just saying, no, I'm passive and I'm not going to be that anymore. I'm going to be actively involved and very clear on all the numbers. And then naturally, I'm going to behave in a different way because of that. It's like, it allows a pivot point that otherwise you can't have unless you get really honest about the way that you see yourself as an owner. Now, I love asking this for all the different roles that I play in my life. Some of those are work related, some of those are not. It's super interesting to ask yourself, like, what is my self-image as a mother? What is my self-image as a wife? What is my self-image as a team leader? What is my self-image as a coach? What's my self-image as an owner? So all of these, I have a different sort of vibe that pops up, and there's a lot of things I believe about myself within each one of those, but there's usually something that feels like it needs to surface. And that is my chance, my opportunity to have a look at what needs to be looked at and make some decisions about how I want to think about myself instead. And if I'm going to have those beliefs about myself, what kind of action would I be taking that's different than right now, the action that I'm taking? It's a very self-reflective exercise, but it's worth doing, because the more in tune you stay with how you see yourself and what you believe about yourself in each of those roles, then you're more conscious about showing up in the ways that you want to show up and developing the ways that you want to develop. Instead of just chasing a goal, running hard at something, and you can get the goal, but getting something is very different than having something. Having capacity for that new level is very, this is the work. It is your self-image. The reason I'm using the word self-image or the term self-image is because one of my dearest friends, Tanya, this is what she focuses on entirely. So she's a coach and she has a business called the School of Self-Image. And the work that she does with these women is remarkable. So as I listen to her and see her with her clients, and she and I have so many great, deep conversations on this topic, is worth it to bring to you. And it's naturally, it kind of comes out with the clients that I'm working with. And when I look up the definition of self-image, it's the idea, conception, or mental image one has of oneself. That is, I think, a really important thing to pay attention to, because you need to be a match. You need to live into this next level that you're going after. And if you just keep staying here mentally, like your self-image stays down 2 levels lower, and you kick into gear and you go create something that you haven't created before, you create these new set of results, it's like up a notch or two in terms of leveling up for yourself, but your self-image is down here, then the gap is very, very uncomfortable. And if you don't do the work to become a match for your new level, you will create external circumstances that match your self-image. That is how this will go. So again, when I said earlier, your behavior will always be in harmony with your self-image. Your results will find harmony with your self-image. That's what I mean. And the reason that this is so important is because all of you listening to this podcast are shooting for something for yourselves. You would not be interested in this podcast otherwise. So how can you be very awake to the results that you're going after? Who do you need to be in order to have those results? And it may not match up perfectly like, oh, I get these results and my self-image is a total match. But having the awareness of closing the gap is going to be extremely important for you in order to have capacity to retain that new level. Because if you don't, eventually there will be harmony. So if you don't do the work to create a self-image that matches your new results, then what will happen is your self-image, if that's going to stay the way it is, then your results will come down to meet your self-image every single time. So it will find harmony and it will level out. So the question is, are you going to create a self-image that's a match for your new business or the new goals that you're hitting and the new results that you're creating? Or are you not going to give attention to who you need to be and what you need to live into and how you internally need to level up and how your self-image needs to come up and level up? If you're not willing to do that work, your business is going to come down, or the results that you're getting will always come down to match your self-image. Okay, now I'm definitely repeating myself, but this is so interesting. It's a tough topic to really dig into and try to convey in a way that's digestible without digging in with you on your stuff and really getting one-on-one with it, which I had the luxury of doing with clients and with mastery group members on coaching calls. But it's important, and that's why I'm bringing it here to you. Now, I will say, I've taught the masterclass that I just taught on February 18th, which you can get access to at velocitywork.com. We talk a lot about, the whole class was on result cycles. It was called How to Trade Being Busy for Actual Results. But in there, I'm teaching an actual diagram and showing you high result cycles and low result cycles and what will kick you into a high result cycle. It's almost like you keep spiraling up with your results, or times where we all find ourselves in some capacity in a low result cycle at times. And so then how do you adjust to put yourself back into a high result cycle? Many people who live sort of on default or unconscious, or they're kind of at the whim of the world, they're really busy but not really productive, they're in a low result cycle. They're spinning in it. And one of the reasons that you get kicked into, or you will stay in a low result cycle, is what you believe about yourself and what's possible. So as I taught in the classes, there's certain things that you can there's leverage points. You can take control over, there's 3 different things to be exact, and people don't. People will take control over action, and that's a beautiful thing. But if you don't pay attention to the other 2 leverage points, then you're working in 2nd gear and you could be in 5th gear. Like, what are we doing here? And if you take control over all 3, you won't be spinning in a low result cycle. But this is part of it. Part of one of your leverage points is what you believe, what you think. If what you believe and what you think about yourself, you're not working on that to really elevate that and see yourself in this new light, this up-leveled light, see yourself differently, then you're always going to have a hard time. You're always going to find yourself more often than you want to be in a low results cycle. It's also relevant because of the topics we've been discussing behind the scenes of velocity work and the classes I've been teaching and the content I'm putting out. This has everything to do with it. Everything to do with it is your self-image. It's just what you think about yourself and what you believe about yourself. So when someone tells me I'm a procrastinator, okay, how about you stop saying that? That's just a thought. It's a belief that you have about yourself, but it's just a thought on repeat. Stop doing that. If you want to get to this next level, you're going to have a very difficult time doing that with the belief system that I am a procrastinator. And even if you say, well, it's true, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. That's not going to be helpful or useful to you where you're going. So what can you believe about yourself instead that will be useful to you in creating a self-image that needs to be created in order to achieve the results and have the results, have the capacity to keep those results and let it be your new foundation? You need to see yourself differently. And I also always tell people, sometimes it's too big of a jump to go from I'm a procrastinator to I am fully focused nearly all of the time. I stay on point nearly all of the time. Okay, that may be too big of a jump. Like, you don't actually believe that about yourself. You want to, but you have to live into it. You don't quite believe it yet. Well, you don't want to tell your brain to keep coming up with things that you don't quite believe in yet. That's not helpful either. So you have to find what I call bridge thoughts. Instead of saying I'm a procrastinator, then you could say something like, I am becoming someone who is focused most of the time. Or I am becoming someone who's focused. Or I am becoming someone who doesn't allow distractions. Like that's more of a bridge thought, like I am becoming as an example, but you can put anything in the front of that sentence of what you want to be that feels useful for where you're going and what you're living into. And that will help shape your self-image. What you believe about yourself shapes your self-image, and your self-image shapes your entire life, as my friend says that owns the School of Self-Image. I love that. Your self-image shapes your entire life. And this is why. This whole podcast, the things we're talking about, that's why. Also, if it's helpful for bridge thoughts, I often use I am becoming, fill in the blank. And another one I really like is I am learning to be, fill in the blank. And those really helpful. Like that gives me something to focus on instead of the way that I have been seeing myself, which isn't useful for where I'm going. I have to start shifting into it. And if I don't quite yet believe this like full force, I am fully focused nearly all the time. If I don't believe that about myself, then I'm going to have to bridge it. And the more that I can bridge it, it can be really useful to get your brain on board to see yourself in a new light and much more quickly become that full force version of yourself where you could honestly say, I am focused nearly all of the time. If it's in my calendar, it's as good as done. The goals that I set, it's as good as done. Like you can start believing those things much easier if you've maybe bridged your way there mentally. It's not such a huge shift. And I think the turtle step, it's always turtle steps. We come back to the really small things that make the biggest difference. So that's like a way to do a mental turtle step for yourself is to think I am becoming someone who, when it's in my calendar, it's as good as done. Or I'm learning to be the person that when it's in my calendar, it's as good as done. Or when I set a goal, it's as good as done, whatever it might be. Fill in the blank for you. How do you see yourself right now? Who do you need to be? How do you need to see yourself? What do you need to believe about yourself that matches the results you're creating? And how can you bridge yourself there mentally so that your self-image starts to shift, so that it starts to shape your self-image, what you're believing about yourself? Because what you believe about yourself, your self-image, shapes the results that you get. I hope you guys can use this podcast as an awareness opener, because as I have talked to so many clients in the last week about this, they're just dealing with the cognitive dissonance and very, very aware. I'm really proud of my clients because they are super receptive when I bring this stuff up and they can see it. And now they'll be able to shift it. Their awareness level is pretty high. And now it's just getting better and better and better, and they're fine tuning. But it's never comfortable, right? Like there's never this perfect balance of your self-image is perfectly matching the results that you're creating. And it's just this beautiful, smooth, easy journey. Anytime you're going after something new and creating something you've never created before, and whatever your next level is, there is cognitive dissonance that you have to learn to manage and have an awareness about it so much. Because it's so uncomfortable, people will retreat back. And that's because their self-image doesn't match where they're going. So they have to pull back because they will pull back their results. They'll tighten the reins so that it feels a little more comfortable. And instead of really wading through the dissonance and leveling up and choosing to work on their beliefs instead of trying to change the external world to match so that it's more comfortable, the clients I'm talking about are doing the work of changing their beliefs to match, make sure that it matches the level that they're at. And that is not easy work. It's not straightforward. It's not simple. There's no blueprint. There's no recipe for this. There's helpful things like bridging your thoughts so that you start to see yourself in a new light, and then another new light, and then another new light. And then you finally kind of reach this next level of belief. It's really solid for you. You see yourself as a woman or a man who fill in the blank. But it's not a light switch that you can flip on and off. And so it really does take a great level of awareness. So I'm hoping that this podcast serves as a tool for you to look in your own brain and ask yourself with honesty, what are your beliefs, your current set of beliefs about yourself? There's going to be some great ones, and there's going to be some that don't serve you anymore. And those are the things that you can wake up to start to shift so that you create a new self-image, a new set of beliefs about yourself for where it is that'll be useful for where it is that you're going. As a closing exercise, here's what I recommend you do. Get out a piece of paper, and I want you to write down the goals that you have. What are you shooting for specifically? And then I want you to start writing about who you need to become in order to create that result and have that result as your new normal, your new foundation. Who do you need to become? What traits do you need to possess? What do your new normals need to be? How do you need to operate? Those are the kinds of questions that it will start to get you. You'll see how you need to shift. And then the next thing to write is, how do you currently see yourself? Let your beliefs about your current self come up so that you can see the dissonance between who you are now and who you need to be. And once you have in front of you how you currently see yourself, what you currently believe about yourself, the ways that you're currently operating, which, by the way, the way that you believe about yourself is driving how you operate, but just kind of getting all of that, dump that out of your brain. And then you see the difference between that and who you need to be and how you need to see yourself and what you need to be believing and thinking about yourself. Then you can start to bridge the gap. How do you get from here to there? And it's probably not just one jump. You can't think the way you currently think and then just jump to believing what you have written down about who you need to be, but you can bridge that. How can you start to live into that belief about yourself? How can you start to adopt it and move in that direction and drop thinking on purpose, deliberately stop thinking what you're currently thinking, move into a different light? That is your work. For me, when I'm doing this kind of stuff, getting it out of my head and onto paper is the way to go. You know what you're shooting for. Once you get it out of your head, who you need to become in order to have those new results. How do you currently think about yourself and see yourself? And how can you start to bridge the gap and live into this new identity? And that identity shift is your work. Sure, there's lots of action that also needs to be taken, but it should be taken from this identity shifting place that you're in, not the current way you see yourself. Do that work on paper and it will reveal so much to you. And from there, you can make some decisions on maybe just a belief or two that you're going to currently think on purpose that you do believe that will allow you to live into this new identity, this new self-image. And that will allow you to create so much more quickly the results that you really want to create. All right, everybody, have a beautiful week. I'll see you here next Tuesday. Hey, if you like this podcast, you are going to love Mastery Group. Come check out our coaching program that's centered around strategic planning every quarter with lots of accountability, coaching, and support in between. Don't spend another day without knowing exactly what you're aiming for, without having a strategic plan to get there, and without having the tools and support in place to make sure that you honor that plan. Get more information about the next round of enrollment at velocitywork.com/join.